I was so genuinely excited to have the opportunity to interview Ita O'Brien, who, if you don't know, is a very, very well respected and well known intimacy coordinator in the industry. She's been the intimacy coordinator on so many really big projects, from Normal People to I May Destroy You to Gentleman Jack. So I think it's such an important topic and such an important role to talk about. So I hope you learn a lot from this. So today I'm joined by Ita O'Brien, who really pioneered the role of intimacy coordinator. And I have so much respect for you and the work you've done to transform the industry and to make it a better and safer place for us to create these kind of scenes. And I've watched loads of interviews that you've done, probably all of them that are out there in researching this. And I've seen there's a lot of misconceptions about your role. So I wanted to ask you, what scenes other than the sex scenes can you have an intimacy coordinator for?
Yes, I'm amazed that you've watched all of my videos. That's quite a few hours there. So yeah, so obviously intimacy is about intimacy, sort of rather than so intimate content of sex scenes, obvious. But then any time that there's nakedness or nudity for whatever reason, whether medical operations, when a body has been handled by other actors who are playing the people who are manhandling that body, really important. In those situations, we work really closely with the medical experts. And that's really interesting because we work both with the expert about physically what the actors who are playing the doctors are actually doing and what the procedures are and how they handle those instruments and what if someone's doing an operation, how that is. And then you have the expert who's brought the medical equipment and they're teaching you how to handle the equipment. So it's a real dovetailing of skills of practitioners like myself as the intimacy coordinator, the medical equipment person and the expert medical performer. So that's really good. Yes, things like robots and naked robots and robots being printed. That's an interesting one. Childbirth, the whole aspect of childbirth is obviously incredibly intimate and really important. Again, we co-work with an expert midwife as they bring the detail of what you should be doing, and then we teach then the choreography from that, using all of that detail and making sure that anybody that's been through that childbirth will recognize what happens and to feel it's a really well told story. And then things like parent and child intimate touch, that we want an adult actor with a child actor to be telling the really good physical story that lets you know that this is really a family. And obviously there's really intimate touch. Perhaps a mum's sat with her 2-year-old on her lap, and the 2-year-old very often have legs open and hands on thighs, or how you hold a sort of like a 3-year-old baby. All of that, no assumptions. It needs to be, and in that our journey is talking not just to the actors and to the director, but we're checking in with the child's parent and or guardian, and then we journey through in that way, sharing with the parent or guardian what the scene is, what the storytelling is, but then how we're going to shoot it, because very often perhaps it's a child having to come across. So this in Watchmen, there was a child who was sort of wandering around a house, and then the people who own the house come into their bedroom. He hides in the wardrobe, and they get on and make love. But of course, it's not suitable for a child to be watching that intimate content. So it's both sharing with the parent what the storytelling is, and then how we're going to shoot it so the child is never exposed to that intimate content, but also that journey through to sharing with the child age appropriate to what's going on. And also, if they're too young to know what's going on and probably won't be able to see, that TV series or film, at the point that they filmed it, at some point they will. And sort of also flagging and making sure that the parent has that conversation and reopens up the subject of what they filmed and what the storytelling was, so that as they become sexually aware, that they can revisit that. So yeah, all of that kind of stuff.
That's so interesting, and that's something that I really learned from researching about how much it involves. So I wanted to ask you a bit about the safety aspects as well first. So I have a few questions about that. So firstly, What does a closed set actually involve, and how do you make sure that you maintain an environment where people feel safe and comfortable within that?
Yeah, good question. So what we're looking at, what the overall intention of the idea of a closed set, which I'll explain more clearly just in a minute, is that we want the people who are being made vulnerable by having to take clothes off, while everybody else is standing around with their clothes on and they're peeling off layers and performing intimate content, that they stay feeling respected, empowered, and autonomous, and not being made vulnerable, yeah, by a gratuitous gaze. So basically, what I say on the set, when you once all the lighting has been organised, the microphones have been organised, or the boom operator being present, is that anybody that doesn't actually have a job to do, once you say camera rolling and action, should be out of the room. Yeah, so if someone then can do all their work and then they can sit down and be on their phone, then they should not be there. Out you go. So it's just the minimum people. That would be the director, script supervisor, myself, the intimacy coordinator, obviously camera operator, focus puller, and boom operator. So if it's a single camera, that's basically it. And then of course you've got, well, actually, no, it's not quite it. You've got the first AD that's going to call the shots. And then you've got, really important, your wardrobe department invariably is going to then be supporting any coverings or nakedness of the cast. And so what you're looking at also is that nudity is only from action to cut, and all other times you're covered. So if there is nakedness, the actors, sometimes if they could be wearing a dressing gown and you can take it off just before you cut. But if someone's in bed and they're entwined in each other, you don't want to be, having the dressing gown on, then taking off and then finding the position. Very often we'll ask everybody to step out. We'll find the position with the degree of nakedness, and then we'll just place the dressing gowns over them so they can be in position, they can be ready to jump into the scene. Then we'll just lift the robes, yes. And again, as I say, the rhythm is camera rolling, sound, and then the last thing that happens is pull robes, and then action, and then on cut, nobody moves. And/or we ask the crew to turn their backs, and the wardrobe department come in and place the dressing gowns over the cast, and then they call out covered, and then people can turn, director can go in with their notes, or you can bring in crew if lighting needs to be done. So that's on set. And the other aspect that's really important is that you don't want a gratuitous gaze on what's captured on camera. So not only is it about what happens on the set, but it's also about all the monitors that are on, for normally. So you have Video Village that the wardrobe and makeup department will sit at. You'll have executive producers will invariably have their own monitors, really important. You'll have the sound department will have their monitor if there's dialogue. So you're looking at, if those monitors have to stay on, that they're either in a position that they're sort of a tent's put around them. Executive producers very often will put up an easy up big tent, and they'll go in that, so that's closed down, so that nobody can see. So what we don't want is like a crew member could walk past and just have a look, and again, that gaze on the intimate content that's serving the storytelling isn't just a free-for-all for anybody to look at. So that's really important, and a big part of what we're putting in place way before the day on set, so that's flagged that this is going to be a closed set. And then the last thing is that footage, once it's filmed, is dealt with equally in a really respectful way. So the footage that's recorded, the rushes can go to everybody of scenes that haven't got vulnerable content. But for all scenes that are filmed on a closed set, it's marked restricted viewing, which means that only the essential people who need to see it, like the executive producers, the director, will see it, and that restricted viewing is right the way through to the edit. So that, and it's also flagged in the people then who take over to do the edit of something, and so that equally that content has that limited viewing right the way through the edit. And in my work as well, I speak to the producers as to the cast having the opportunity to see their intimate content before it goes out to the rest of the world. So that's also part of it. So they can either come and see playback on the day, or they can see the rushes perhaps when the next day that they're in, or they can see a rough cut of the edit sort of down the line when the directors sort of basically brought the scene together before it's what's called locked in. And I feel that's a really positive way to do it, because the actors have some distance for it. The director and producers have already got a shape of all the different different camera angles, very often possibly put music to it already. and it means the cast can see what they've offered in their nudity and their simulated sexual content before the rest of the world. They can see it serving the storytelling, and they can sign off on it, and you know that everybody feels empowered, happy with what's been offered, happy with what's happening in those intimate scenes, and it can really be a joyous part of what goes out to the world.
That's very interesting to hear. There's a lot of elements that go into that. But then when you're actually working on creating the content, what systems do you recommend for anyone for communicating and working with boundaries?
Yes, I was really interested when you use the word "what systems." So what are you thinking of when you're
What am
saying
I
what
thinking
system?
of? Well,
Yeah,
there's the red zones and green zones where people say, I'm happy for people to touch me here and not here. Or there's systems of asking for consent for different things that people use.
very good. Okay. So that's yeah. So then what you're calling systems, what I call, and what we've created with the intimacy onset guidelines is professional processes and procedures.
Yes.
Yeah? So that's how I think of it. The fundamental is what we're bringing in with the intimacy guidelines is open communication and transparency around what the intimate content is. So and doing that right from the get-go, just the same as a producer and director would look, oh look, there's a brilliant stunt where we want someone to run along a roof, jump across from one roof to wrong roof, they slide down the roof onto a canopy and land on a barrel of feathers. Um, you know, they're going to look at that, they're going to bring in the stunt coordinator, they're going to talk to it, they're going to look at what safety needs to be put in place, what the actual cast can do, where they need a stunt double, what safety, where they need a harness to jump from one roof. All that kind of stuff is considered right from the get-go. And then if someone needs to practice running along, or you know, all of those techniques are taught, and then finally all the scenes brought together so that the day on set and the day of filming, all the rehearsals being done, all techniques are being taught, all safety is put in place, and you create something that's really exciting and gorgeous and elevates the storytelling and gives you exactly what you want. So that's what we're bringing in with the intimacy guidelines, exactly the same. It's considered right from the get-go, and that didn't happen in the past. Producer and director considering the intimate content, considering what you want, bringing us in as practitioners, as intimacy practitioners, so we can talk about what is it that you want. Once we're brought in on a production and we've spoken to the producers and the directors, will read the script and we create what's called a scene breakdown form. So we're identifying all the intimate content. Because like you say, you know, when you go back to things like, you know, what else do you need an intimacy coordinator for? So they might go, oh, there's that sex scene and that sex scene and that sex scene, and then I read the script and go, hold on a minute, there's a shower here. What do you want for the shower scene? There's an inference of nakedness. What nakedness do you want to see? What nakedness you know, it tells a storytelling. Do you want a full naked back buttock, including naked buttocks and gluteal cleft, i.e. a butt crack? Or actually, do you just want to, are you happy to see like from hip bones up? All of that kind of stuff. So we will do the scene breakdown form, and then I always say to the director, you speak to the cast first. So once we've identified the scenes and we've had a creative conversation and we go through each of the scenes that have been identified, that's great. But then I say to the director, now you speak to the cast first, because everything comes from the director. We are all serving the director's vision. We're all serving the storytelling. We're all serving the script. So the director speaks to the cast first, and once they've spoken to the cast, then I'm told about that, and then I'll check in with the cast and go, great, you've spoken to the director. How do you feel? What's in your agreement and consent regarding intimate content and nudity? Anything you need to know from me, I'll talk them through the process of the intimacy guidelines. So you've got agreement and consent put in there. I'll feed that back both to the director. So it might mean that camera angles need to be changed. I might say, great, happy to do a shower scene, not happy for naked buttocks. I'll go, great, you can wear you know, swimming trunks. I go back to the director and say, okay, that's their agreement and consent. So they know that they've got to then work with their DOP for the camera angles. I'll go to the wardrobe department, we'll say, right, these are their requirements, and so we work together to make sure all the different modesty garments and are put in place. I'm also finding out from the costume department, say there's two characters getting undressed, I'm going, okay, you tell me what their character costumes are, because what their character costumes are obviously is part of the choreography. So also it dovetails, it works both ways. Then the next bit is that in an ideal situation is that we'll have a day to rehearse, and we'll hopefully do that before the day on set. So at that point, it's always actor director process, talking about the intimate content, and then we'll get the work up on its feet. And at that point, we go, right, okay, even though you said I'm happy for this and this, now in this moment today with you two people, what are you happy regarding touch? Where's your yeses? Where's your nos? Where's the agreement? Yeah, and again, it's really important. And as you were saying, Lottie, when we were speaking just before we started this interview, what's joyous in the industry is before the intimacy guidelines, an actor was concerned that if they ever said no in any way, shape or form, that they would be considered the one who was unprofessional, and they would be the one that would be considered a troublemaker, and would be concerned about, you know, getting a reputation and losing their job and not being employed again, which was mad, isn't it? Because actually someone to be able to say, to call their boundaries, and again, what wasn't really understood or considered was that what someone is comfortable to do personally affects then what they can offer professionally. And so this process and the procedures that we go through check out what someone is comfortable with personally and inviting their no. So I say, so it's now turning us on a head. It's say, tell us your requirements, tell us what's not okay for you, so that we know that we can all work freely and openly, professionally and creatively with everywhere that is in your agreement and consent. And then that means that the actor can bring the best of themselves as an artist with all their skills as a brilliant actor, to be free, feeling listened to and heard, not feeling put upon and having their boundaries overstepped, to be able to give their best of themselves. So that's such a joyous thing. So in that process of then checking out touch, and checking it, you know, we've already checked out nudity, but yeah, checking out touch in that moment, and then we take what's everywhere that is a freely given yes into the choreography. And the other aspect is, I always say, your yes is your yes, your no is your no, and the areas of maybe is also a no. Yeah, so you only work with what's freely given, and then we choreograph really clearly with that content. Yeah, give the actors a really good, clear outline and structure for the scene. So that's done hopefully in a rehearsal. If not, you're doing it on the day on set. And then when you come on set, refine the choreography. By then the actors will have settled into their body. And again, it's a frame and it's a structure that allows the actor then to be in the moment, to be different every scene, to be listening to the director, for the director to be able to really give detailed notes. And it completely lifts how it used to be in the past, which was, oh, this is what I want, you to just go for it. And then because it's considered awful that you've made them just go for it, they do it just in one take, and the director hopes that they've caught what they needed. No more. Again, this is just opening it out, so you're filming the scene just like any other scene. So those are the processes that we're putting in place.
I think that's really good. What I've really liked that you've said in other interviews, and what I've heard about your process, is that people are free to give their no's, so you can really trust their yeses, and you take the process really slowly as well, so people can really think and ensure that they feel comfortable for it and they don't regret it either.
That's right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes, your no is a gift, so that we can trust your yes. Brilliant that you've picked up on that. And also that, as you're hearing, because what we also want to support is that we're not considered that we're taking up time on the day on set. Just like a really good stunt, you're going to rehearse it way before the day that you're filming it, so that all the safety aspects are put in place and the actors have it in their bodies, and then they can just really go for it. It's the same now with intimate content. We're looking at supporting the producers and the production to be cost effective, which means let's find a time that we can rehearse before the day on set. And again, that means then that everybody on the day on set can be open and free, happy, have a good day on set and create the best work.
So I know that you also speak about debriefing afterwards, because people can often look back and think, actually, maybe I wasn't comfortable with that. Maybe I said yes when I didn't actually mean it. So how do you approach the debriefing to make sure everyone feels comfortable after the scene's been filmed?
Great. Okay. Again, really good question. That's a big shift in the industry. So it's interesting because so there's two aspects of it. One, there's the de-rolling, as it were, when a performer has finished performing an intimate scene, and particularly if it's really sexy and charged and full on. This is that energy, isn't it? Is just coursing through someone's body. But that's them serving as character, and there's a growing awareness of an actor's fundamental health in life. You know, so in order to maintain yourself as a healthy human being outside of your work, both physically, emotionally, and psychologically. You know, so for example, if you're playing Richard III and you're doing a physicality with a hunchback, you know that you're going to do a warm up, you're going to find what that physicality is, but at the end of the performance, you're going to sort of shake it off. You know, you're going to put in place a really good warm down, a place where you can sort of unleash it, you know, do stretches, do a roll down, so that you're coming back to you know, opening out your body and mitigating the effects of holding that physicality for that. So the same is now, you know, the awareness that the same goes for emotionally and psychologically. So with the intimate content, I'll talk about bookending. So obviously the other awareness is that this is a physical body dance, just the same as a dance or a fight. So we're always looking at, in that preparation and in my work that I do with the actors in the rehearsal and then on the day on set, is having a moment to warm up the bodies, get into the body, wake up the spine, you know, sort of so you're physically ready to be physically expressive. So then we talk about, at the end of the day, then how do you take that off? So, and there's different techniques that you can use. Things like I would say back to roll downs or shaking out, literally shaking it off, shaking hands, shaking feet. Visualization, that's another one that I use. Is, and imagine that you're standing under a waterfall and just having all of that character and all of that energy just washing down. Or you can actually physically do that. Go to your trailer, or, you know, sort of take your character costume off and get in the shower and literally wash it off. The actions of taking character costume off is another one. Or you can have rituals in your changing room. You might put a stone out or a toy that is character, and then at the end of the day, then you'll put it away. So there's all those different things that you can do, and what's important is to recognize that as an artist, to recognize that actually supporting and taking care of your physical, emotional, and psychological health when you're you know, sort of like in your work, is actually part of being a professional. That wasn't really considered. I started in the musical theatre profession in the 80s, and there was no question of a warm down. It was pulling your eyelashes out and running to the pub, and you know, whoever was first at the pub to get the first round in, and that was your warm down. So that was a very 1980s way of warming down. No more. Yeah. So I say, do your warm down, and then you can choose whether you want to go with your fellow cast mates and go and have a drink, or whether you want to choose to go and walk in nature, or go home.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of the intimacy practitioner is then that we will always check in with the cast, and I say always wait 24 hours, because at the end of the filming day, or very often you're on a high, you know, and you're in the flow of that, and it's very often, if something's happened that's not quite right for you, it's that thing of going to sleep and that'll bubble up, and it's that awareness. And so we'll always check in at least 24 hours later, going, are you happy, any concerns? And if there are any concerns, then we can follow up on it with the director, with the producers, and help support whatever those concerns are.
I think that's very important. And I'll ask these next two questions together, but how does the choreography process work to make great intimate scenes that serve the story? And also, how do you make sure that people feel like they're not being too vulnerable and it doesn't look like themselves? Because people can often bring a lot of themselves to a role.
So so what we're looking at is focusing on who these characters are. Yes. Why is it in the storytelling? How is it pushing the storytelling forward? What does it tell us about each character and in each character in relationship? So it starts from supporting the actor-director process, that we as intimacy practitioners are just present, listening to the actors and the directors, discussing the scene, what their thoughts are, what they want. And we as intimacy practitioners are listening both to what people are saying, but also how they're saying it. And invariably, I'm listening to the impulses that are coming from the actors, because we don't want to impose a choreography on someone that's not natural for them. So we're looking, watching, and that's part of the skill of the intimacy practitioner. And then when we get up on our feet, you know, we know the basic outline, because that's what's being discussed in talking about the shape of the scene. And then we make sure, as I say, you go through that agreement and consent of touch once you know basically what the shape of the scene is, and then we'll choreograph really clearly. So, you know, and all the focus is on serving this character, serving storytelling, and the character having the character's physicality. So we're in agreement and consent, we're checking out personally, how is it for you today? And then now we're stepping into character, and then we're choreographing with character physicality, and we're choreographing purely what is needed for this particular emotional story, for this particular scene. So that focus allows the actor to really separate out, and really tell the character's physicality. And then we can use different techniques, different acting techniques, like really anchor it, say, in Laban. Have you worked on Laban work?
Yes.
Yeah, so floating, gliding, flicking, dabbing. So we can talk about that kind of, so when I worked on Lady Chatterley's Lover, the lovely Nicholas Denton, who played Valmont, had relationships with several different women. So we talked about the different qualities, so one who was more smooth and cat-like with them, the other one who was more childlike and made himself more vulnerable. So we were looking at the different qualities that he had and how that went into the intimate content with those. Animal work is absolutely brilliant. The different rhythms that come from that, either sort of a dog can be like a quick light rhythm, or you can have a gorilla that's a deep, expansive, slower rhythm. All of those different possible techniques help the actor to really focus on detail or physicality that doesn't bring in who they are in their beauty of their intimate lives with their loved ones.
I think that's really interesting and really important. And finally, I want to ask, is there any final advice, anything you want to promote, ways people can bring good practice into their own work?
So yes, what's amazing and what I find incredible is, my intention was just to work with best practice, to work with understanding this as a body dance. And again, just that thing of agreement and consent to be sought so that everybody can work openly and professionally to the top of their game. What the shift is in the industry is opening out to, just as you were talking about consent-based learning in our drama schools, leading to consent-aware students, which obviously will lead to consent-aware artists out in the industry. And that's a huge shift. And then the other aspect is then that this is our workplace. And just like any statement, you've got up on the tube, our underground staff should be able to work without fear of harassment and abuse. Or if you're working in an office, you've got your HR department. Everybody should be able to work without being concerned that they might be asked to overstep their own boundaries. And the madness is in intimate content. In the past, it was like, oh, you're an actor, so that intimate content's part of it. So you should be able to be completely naked and you should be able to do any intimate content because that's what your job is. And it's mad, isn't it? It's mad that this is part of our job, but this is part of the job, the work. Yes, and the same goes. Nobody should be expected to overstep their own boundaries to serve their work or to be in fear of harassment and abuse. So that shift is huge. So as an artist coming out, it's really understanding that and the joy of that. And also, it used to be that, oh, but if you want to be creative and maverick, then that's just part of it. It's like, no, actually, everybody can be more creative, can be more edgy, can find more exciting possibilities of physicality and character, physical storytelling when you work with open conversations, when you work with agreement and consent that allows the actor to stay right out there, like, bringing the fullness of everything that they can. And so you as an artist, that shift, this is our workplace. Yeah, so you do your work to step into the work, so you can step in and you equip yourself to work really clearly, and you step away, and that that we're now the industry is supporting consent awareness in our workplace and how we work as an artist for everybody, and that actually makes better work.
Thank you, and thank you so much for your time and all the work you've done.
Oh, thank you, Lottie. It's a real pleasure.
So thank you again to Ita for filming this with me, and I hope everyone gained as much from this conversation as I did, and thank you so much for watching.